In the dark corner of the Iron Lantern bar in Norfolk Bay, a small woman sat quietly beside a worn tablet. No one paid attention to Chief Petty Officer Elena Ward's neatly tied brown hair until 3 Marines walked in, surrounding her table with arrogant smiles. They assumed she was a weak sailor, perfect prey to prove their prowess before the crowd. They didn't know the old leather journal before her once belonged to her fallen father, much less who Elena truly was. And when they touched it, they opened the gates of hell. The Iron Lantern smelled of stale beer and diesel fuel, a combination unique to military towns where the ocean met industrial sprawl. Elena Ward occupied the corner booth furthest from the entrance, positioned with her back to the brick wall, old habit, trained reflex. The lighting was dim, amber bulbs casting long shadows across scarred wooden tables that had absorbed decades of spilled drinks and carved initials. She turned another page of the manual before her. Signals Intelligence and Electronic Deception, Soviet Military Academy, 1984. The Cyrillic text was faded, the binding cracked from years of handling. Red ink annotations filled the margins, her father's handwriting, precise and methodical. Master Sergeant Daniel Ward had died 15 years ago in Helmand Province during a classified SIGINT operation. The official report claimed equipment failure. Elena had never believed it. The bartender, a former Marine named Tommy Briggs, knew better than to disturb her. He'd served long enough to recognize the 1,000-yard stare that occasionally surfaced when she paused between pages. Elena was 28, but carried herself with the controlled stillness of someone much older. Her frame was compact, economical 5'5", 130 pounds of lean muscle built through years of brutal selection training that 97% of candidates failed to complete. She was the only woman in her SEAL class to graduate. That fact meant nothing inside the teams. It meant everything outside them. Tonight, she was researching a pattern her father had identified 2 months before his death. Anomalous signal behavior during joint NATO exercises in 2009. He'd written in the margin of page 47, triple-layer deception. They're not jamming, they're conducting. Like an orchestra where every instrument thinks it's playing solo. Elena understood what he meant now. She'd seen similar patterns during her last deployment in the Baltic, during Exercise Iron Wolf. Command channels disrupting at precise intervals, encrypted bursts that appeared random but followed mathematical distributions too perfect to be natural. Someone was testing doctrine, probing for systemic weaknesses in how American forces communicated under stress. The door opened, bringing cold November air and the sound of masculine laughter. 3 men entered, wearing civilian clothes that couldn't hide their bearing. Marines, she identified them instantly by gait, posture, the way their eyes swept the room assessing threats before moving toward the bar. The largest one, mid-30s with a shaved head and shoulders like a linebacker, led the group. His companions followed half a step behind, one younger, Hispanic, with restless energy, the other taller, blonde, moving with practiced aggression. They ordered drinks. Whiskey, neat trying to prove something. Elena returned her attention to the manual. Page 53 detailed psychological warfare through signal manipulation. Her father had underlined a passage in red. The enemy doesn't need to destroy your communications. He needs only to make you doubt them. The 3 Marines took their drinks to a table near the center of the room. Their voices carried too loud, performative, talking about their unit, their training, how soft the Navy had become. Standard inter-service rivalry amplified by alcohol and boredom. Elena ignored them. For 20 minutes, the evening continued its predictable pattern. Tommy served drinks. The jukebox played country music nobody listened to. Elena made notes in a small field book, cross-referencing her father's observations with recent intelligence briefings she'd accessed through proper channels. Then the large Marine stood, whiskey glass in hand, and his gaze landed on her corner table. His eyes narrowed, focusing on the Cyrillic text visible even from across the room. Elena felt the shift before he moved the way predators pause before committing to an attack. She didn't look up, but her peripheral vision tracked all 3 men as they exchanged glances. The leader said something quiet. The other 2 laughed. They approached. Elena's left hand moved subtly beneath the table, thumb releasing the retention snap on the folding knife clipped inside her waistband. She didn't draw it, just prepared. Her right hand remained visible, resting beside the manual, relaxed. The 3 Marines stopped at her table, forming a loose semicircle that blocked her exit to the front door. The rear door to the kitchen remained unobstructed. She'd verified it when she arrived. Always 2 exits. Always know which one you'll take. Evening, the large Marine said. His name tape would have read Mercer if he'd been in uniform. She'd seen him before, in passing at the Norfolk Bay Naval Station. Gunnery Sergeant, Bravo Recon Company. Interesting reading material for a quiet Tuesday night. Elena looked up slowly, making eye contact for precisely 2 seconds before returning her gaze to the manual. Evening, that Russian. The younger Hispanic Marine leaned closer, trying to read the text. His breath smelled like whiskey and poor decisions. Soviet, Elena corrected quietly. There's a difference. Mercer smiled, but nothing about it suggested humor. You a linguist or something? Intelligence weenie? Or something? See, that's interesting. Mercer pulled out the chair across from her without invitation, sitting heavily. His companions remained standing, blocking her in. Because I'm wondering what a Navy girl is doing in a Marine bar, reading Russian military manuals that he checked his watch 2200 on a Tuesday. Seems a little suspicious. Wouldn't you say, Blake? The blonde Marine Blake Harlow, Elena's memory supplied, nodded. Definitely suspicious, Gunny. Maybe we should check it out. Make sure everything's secure. Elena's pulse remained steady at 58 beats per minute. She'd learned long ago that fear was a choice, one she refused to make. This is a Navy town. The Iron Lantern has served fleet personnel since 1967. You're the ones drinking in someone else's establishment. Oh, she's got attitude, the Hispanic Marine Corporal, Vince Reyes said, grinning. I like that. What's your name, sweetheart? Elena didn't answer. She turned another page. Mercer's hand shot out, palm down on the manual, preventing her from continuing. My friend asked you a question. Where I come from, that's disrespectful. The temperature in Elena's chest dropped 10 degrees. A physiological response she'd experienced in combat but never stateside. This wasn't hazing. The malice in Mercer's eyes was too focused, too specific. This was targeted. Remove your hand, Elena said quietly. Or what? Mercer leaned forward. No one's saving you now, sweetheart. It's just us having a conversation. Elena's right hand remained motionless beside the manual. Her left stayed beneath the table. She ran probability calculations automatically. 3 opponents, all larger, all trained. At least 2 standard drinks in their system judging by pupil dilation and reaction time. Mercer outweighed her by 90 pounds. In a straight grappling match, physics favored him. Physics wasn't the only factor. This manual belonged to my father, Elena said. Voice controlled, emotionless. Master Sergeant Daniel Ward died in service. You're currently touching one of the last things he held. I'm asking you once more. Remove your hand. Something flickered in Mercer's expression, not respect, but recognition. He'd heard the name. Elena saw it in the microscopic pause before he spoke again. Ward. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Afghanistan, right? Equipment failure. Real shame. His hand remained on the manual, fingers deliberately spreading across the cover. Must be hard, growing up without a daddy. Is that why you joined the Navy? Trying to prove something? Blake laughed. Reyes shifted his weight, closing the distance another 6 inches. Elena's breathing didn't change. Last warning. Mercer's smile widened. You know what I think? I think you're in way over your head. I think you've been playing pretend. Reading your daddy's books, trying to be something you're not. His fingers curled, beginning to drag the manual toward him. I think I'm going to take a look at this and see what's so. Elena moved. Her right hand snapped forward, thumb and forefinger targeting the radial nerve cluster on Mercer's wrist. Not a strike, a precision nerve attack that turned his entire hand numb instantly. His fingers spasmed open reflexively. Elena's left hand emerged from beneath the table, not holding the knife but moving in a blur. She trapped Mercer's suddenly useless hand against the manual with her right palm while her left hand formed a rigid blade edge that drove into the brachial plexus origin point above his clavicle. Mercer's eyes went wide. His entire right arm went dead. Blake moved first, instinct overriding training. He lunged forward, reaching for Elena's shoulder to pull her back. She'd already pivoted, using Mercer's body as an anchor point to swing her legs up and plant both boots into Blake's chest. Not a kick, a controlled press that used his forward momentum against him, redirecting him into the table behind them. He crashed into chairs, drinks shattering. Reyes grabbed for her from the left. Elena dropped beneath the grasping hands, her shoulder slipping under his extended arm. She continued the rotation, her right elbow striking his inner thigh precisely on the femoral nerve cluster. His leg buckled. 3 seconds elapsed. Mercer recovered enough to swing his left hand, a looping haymaker powered by rage and humiliation. Elena didn't block it. She moved inside the arc, too close for the punch to generate power. Her forehead grazed his chin as she stepped past, her hands finding his left wrist and elbow simultaneously. Basic judo. Kote Geishi. Wrist out, elbow down, body rotation. Mercer's weight became leverage. He went airborne, rotated 180 degrees, and hit the floor on his back hard enough to drive the air from his lungs. Blake had recovered, charging with more caution this time. Elena sidestepped, her right foot hooking behind his ankle at the precise moment her left hand pressed against his hip. He tripped over nothing, his face meeting the floor. Reyes tried a tackle, proper technique, head to the side. Elena sprawled her hips back, her weight pressing down on his shoulders, while her hands found the pressure points behind his ears. He gasped, his grip loosening. She rolled him over her hip, controlled descent, and applied a temporary blood choke, just enough pressure to send a clear message before releasing. 8 seconds total. All 3 Marines were on the floor, not unconscious. Elena hadn't struck them hard enough for that. But they were hurt, confused, and seeing her in an entirely different light. She stood, retrieved the manual, and brushed invisible dust from its cover. Her breathing hadn't elevated above training baseline. Not a single drop of sweat marked her forehead. The bar was silent. Tommy stood behind the counter, phone in hand. Elena met his eyes and shook her head once. He nodded, understanding. Elena placed a $20 bill on her table, then walked to the bar and added another $50 for the broken glasses. And Tommy, the security camera above the door is functional. The footage will be needed. Yes, ma'am. Elena turned back to the 3 Marines. Mercer had managed to prop himself on one elbow, his face purple with rage and shame. She looked at him for 3 seconds, letting him see exactly what he'd provoked. Next time, she said quietly, ask before you touch something that doesn't belong to you. She walked out through the front door, the manual tucked securely under her arm. Behind her, Mercer's voice was barely a whisper. Who the fuck was that? Tommy answered, Chief Petty Officer Elena Ward, Naval Special Warfare Development Group. She's a SEAL, you dumbass. And you just assaulted her. The summons arrived at 0600 the next morning. Elena had been awake since 0430, completing her daily routine, 5-mile run, bodyweight circuits, cold shower. She was drinking black coffee in her small apartment when her phone displayed the message, report to JAG office, Norfolk Bay Naval Station, 0800. Mandatory, Commander Rachel Morrison, JAG Judge Advocate General. Military legal. Elena dressed in her service uniform, every crease exact, every ribbon positioned precisely according to regulations. She arrived at 0745, early enough to demonstrate respect for the process, not so early that it suggested anxiety. Commander Morrison's office was sterile and impersonal. Gray walls, regulation furniture, an American flag in the corner. Morrison herself was late 40s, sharp-eyed, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent decades navigating military bureaucracy. Chief Ward, sit. Elena sat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. Morrison opened a folder. Last night, approximately 2200 hours, you were involved in an altercation at the Iron Lantern Bar. 3 Marines from Bravo Recon Company filed assault complaints. They claim you attacked them without provocation. That's inaccurate, ma'am, is it? Morrison turned the folder so Elena could see it. Because I have 11 witnesses, all Marines who submitted statements corroborating the complaint. They all say the same thing. You were behaving suspiciously, reading foreign military documents, and when approached for a friendly conversation, you became violent. Elena's expression didn't change. And the security footage? There was a camera malfunction. No footage available. Of course there wasn't. Elena had expected this, but the confirmation still sent ice through her veins. Ma'am, with respect, that's impossible. The camera was functional when I left. The bartender, Tommy Briggs, can confirm. Mr. Briggs has declined to make a statement. Says he was in the back room and didn't see what happened. Elena's jaw tightened fractionally. Tommy was being pressured. That meant this went higher than a simple bar fight. Morrison closed the folder. Chief Ward, I'm going to be direct. This looks bad. Very bad. You're a female SEAL, the only one in your class. There are people who think that was a mistake, that standards were lowered, that you don't belong. An incident like this plays directly into that narrative. Standards weren't lowered, ma'am, I believe you. But belief doesn't matter when 11 Marines are telling a consistent story and there's no evidence to contradict them. Morrison leaned back. However, before I make any recommendations, there's someone who wants to speak with you. He's waiting in conference room C. Elena stood. Who? Captain Randall Pierce. He's the commanding officer of Bravo Recon Company. The name hit Elena like a punch to the solar plexus. She kept her face neutral, but her mind was racing. Pierce. She'd seen that name in her father's files, marginal notes. References to administrative resistance when Daniel Ward had tried to publish his findings about Soviet signal warfare. Pierce had been a major back then, stationed at the same forward operating base in Afghanistan. This wasn't random. Conference room C was smaller than Morrison's office, dominated by a table and 4 chairs. Captain Pierce stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching the morning drill formations on the parade ground. He was 52, graying at the temples, with the rigid bearing of someone who viewed regulations as religious doctrine. He didn't turn when Elena entered. Chief Ward. Close the door. Elena obeyed, standing at attention. At ease, Pierce finally turned. His eyes were cold, analytical. We have a problem, sir. Last night's incident has created a significant complication. 11 Marines filed complaints. That's not something I can ignore, even if he paused deliberately, even if there might be context that's not reflected in their statements. Elena said nothing. Your father was Master Sergeant Daniel Ward, Signals Intelligence Specialist. He served under my command briefly in 2009 at FOB Shkin. Pierce's voice was carefully neutral. He was persistent, had theories about enemy signal operations that didn't align with established doctrine, made people uncomfortable. His theories were correct, sir. Were they? Pierce moved closer, stopping precisely 6 feet away just outside conversational distance, but close enough to establish dominance. Because as I recall, his equipment failed during a routine patrol. Tragic accident. The investigation found no evidence of hostile action. The subtext was clear: don't dig into the past. Elena met his gaze directly. My father identified pattern anomalies in Soviet-era electronic warfare doctrine that matched active operations in theater. He documented systematic deception tactics that could compromise NATO communications architecture. His work was speculative, Pierce interrupted. Based on outdated Soviet manuals and conspiracy thinking, he made serious allegations about operational security without evidence. The manual I was reading last night contains that evidence, sir. Annotations in his handwriting, cross-referenced with signals intelligence from. That manual is unclassified material, Chief Ward. Anyone can buy Soviet-era training documents online. They're historical curiosities, nothing more. Pierce's voice hardened. What they're not is justification for assaulting 3 Marines who were concerned about a sailor reading foreign military doctrine in a public bar. Elena's hands tightened fractionally behind her back. I defended myself. Sir, they put hands on me first. According to 11 witnesses, you were the aggressor. According to available evidence, you committed assault. Pierce let that hang in the air. Now, I could pursue this formally. Court-martial, discharge, possible civilian charges. Your career ends, your father's legacy gets dragged through the mud, and the Navy looks weak for having graduated a SEAL who can't control herself in a bar. Or you recognize this was a misunderstanding. You apologize to the Marines involved, accept non-judicial punishment reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay, and we all move forward. You continue your career, albeit with a permanent mark on your record. The alternative is much worse. Elena processed the offer. It was designed to silence her accept punishment for a crime she didn't commit, or face a rigged legal process. Either way, her credibility was destroyed. Any attempt to continue her father's research would be dismissed as the vendetta of a disgraced sailor. I need time to consider, sir. You have until. Pierce's phone buzzed. He frowned, checking the message. His expression shifted surprise, then concern. Stand by, Chief. He stepped into the hallway, door closing behind him. Elena used the 30 seconds to control her breathing, compartmentalize her anger. This was bigger than a bar fight. Pierce was protecting something, using the Marines as leverage to shut her down before she connected whatever dots her father had been chasing. Pierce returned, his face carefully neutral. Change of plans. Exercise Oracle Falcon has encountered significant complications. You're being temporarily assigned to support. Elena's mind raced. Oracle Falcon was a large-scale joint exercise Navy, Marines, Air Force testing integrated command and control systems against a sophisticated Red Team. It had been planned for months, involving thousands of personnel and cutting-edge communications technology. What kind of complications, sir? Communications, disruptions, multiple units experiencing navigation failures, garbled orders, equipment malfunctions. The situation is escalating. Pierce's jaw tightened. Admiral Hendricks specifically requested someone with your electronic warfare background. You report to the Tactical Operations Center immediately. This wasn't a reprieve, it was a trap. Elena could see it clearly. If Oracle Falcon failed, blame would flow downhill. An embattled SEAL with assault charges pending would make a perfect scapegoat, but refusing wasn't an option. Yes, sir. The Tactical Operations Center was controlled chaos. Elena entered through security checkpoints into a converted warehouse filled with workstations, massive display screens showing real-time satellite imagery and unit positions, and harried personnel speaking rapidly into headsets. The air smelled like ozone and stress sweat. Admiral Marcus Hendricks stood at the center, a tall man in his 60s with white hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent 40 years managing crises. He noticed Elena immediately. Chief Ward, you're the electronic warfare specialist? Yes, sir. Good. We need solutions, not explanations. He gestured to the main display. Exercise Oracle Falcon involves 1,200 personnel across 6 operational zones. Blue Force. Our units are experiencing systematic communications failures. Red Force, led by Klaus Richter, is dominating every engagement. Elena studied the display. Red icons simulated enemy forces controlled 70% of the operational map. Blue icons were scattered, uncoordinated, several showing warning indicators for communications loss. Klaus Richter? Elena recognized the name from her father's notes. Formerly Stasi? Hendricks nodded. East German Signals Intelligence, then private contractor. He's our Red Team commander, best electronic warfare specialist we've ever hired. Supposed to stress test our systems, instead, he's dismantling them. A junior officer approached. Admiral, Delta Company just reported another friendly fire near miss. Their GPS showed friendlies 300 meters south of actual position. How is that possible? Hendricks demanded. Elena moved closer to the display, her mind automatically analyzing patterns. Tri-layer deception. He's not just jamming signals, he's manipulating them. GPS spoofing for navigation confusion, command channel injection for false orders, and psychological mirroring to make units doubt their own equipment. Everyone in the TOC stared at her. Explain, Hendricks said. Soviet-era doctrine, perfected by Stasi in the 80s. You don't destroy enemy communications, you conduct them like an orchestra. The enemy thinks they're in control, but every note they play serves your composition. Elena pointed to the display. Richter is using predictive algorithms to identify our command patterns, then injecting false data that seems legitimate because it follows our own protocols. By the time we realize it's fake, we've already acted on it. How do you know this? Pierce's voice came from behind her. He'd followed her to the TOC. Elena turned. My father documented these exact tactics. Master Sergeant Daniel Ward, Signals Intelligence, died researching this methodology in Afghanistan. The manual I was reading last night contains his analysis of Soviet electronic warfare theory that Richter is currently employing against us. Pierce's face darkened. That's speculation. It's tactical reality, Hendricks interrupted. And if Chief Ward can explain it, maybe she can counter it. He looked at Elena. Can you? Elena studied the display for 10 more seconds. The pattern was clear now. 3 hub points where Red Team signals originated, rotating frequencies in predictable cycles. Richter was confident, maybe overconfident. He was using established doctrine without adapting to the possibility that Blue Force might understand his playbook. Yes, sir. But I need complete access to our communications architecture, all signal intercepts from the past 2 hours, and 1 hour uninterrupted to develop countermeasures. You have 30 minutes, Hendricks said. Sir, I need... Chief Ward, we have units in the field making decisions based on compromised information. Every minute they're blind. People could get hurt, exercise or not. 30 minutes. Make it work. Elena nodded. I'll need a quiet space and minimal equipment. A computer, access to signals, database, and no interruptions. Conference room 3, down the hall. Lieutenant Harper will get you set up. As Elena moved toward the door, Pierce stepped into her path. This is convenient. Exercise fails, you're the last person who touched it. Perfect scapegoat. Elena looked up at him, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You tried to bury my father's work. You're trying to bury me. But if I succeed here, if I prove his methodology works, you'll have to answer questions about why you suppressed it 15 years ago. Pierce said nothing. Elena walked past him. Conference room 3 was actually a converted storage space in the basement, accessible through 2 security doors and a stairwell that smelled faintly of mildew. It contained 1 table, 1 chair, 1 computer workstation that had been assembled in haste. Perfect. No distractions. Elena locked the door behind her, sat down, and opened her father's manual to page 73. The annotations here were dense mathematical formulas, frequency ranges, timing sequences. Daniel Ward had been close to something significant before he died. His final entry, dated 3 days before the equipment failure that killed him, read, "The weakness isn't in their technology, it's in their psychology. Soviet doctrine assumes the enemy will react predictably to deception. They can't improvise when the target refuses to follow the script. The key is finding the conductor's baton, the single command channel that coordinates the entire deception. Disrupt that, and the orchestra collapses." Elena pulled up the signals database, loading every intercept from the past 2 hours of Oracle Falcon. The raw data was overwhelming thousands of transmissions, encrypted and clear, across dozens of frequencies. She needed to filter it, find patterns within chaos. She wrote a quick algorithm, based on her father's notes, that flagged signals with abnormal propagation characteristics. Soviet-era systems had distinctive signatures, timing delays, modulation quirks that modern encryption couldn't fully mask. The algorithm ran 37 hits. Elena cross-referenced those hits with GPS disruptions, false orders, equipment failures, 22 correlations. She isolated those 22 signals, mapped their geographic origin points using triangulation from multiple receivers. 3 locations emerged, grid coordinates that formed a perfect equilateral triangle, each approximately 15 kilometers from the TOC. Richter's command nodes. Elena leaned back, checking the timer on her phone. 18 minutes elapsed, 12 remaining. Now came the hard part, developing a counterstrike that wouldn't just block Richter's deception but would reverse it, turning his own tactics against him. She opened her father's manual to the final annotated page. His handwriting was shaky here, written in haste or under stress. The conductor needs to hear his orchestra to adjust the composition. If you can feed him the music he expects while silently changing what the instruments actually play, he'll conduct you straight to victory. He won't know he's lost until the finale. Elena smiled grimly. Her father had been brilliant. She began typing, building a signal processing framework that would 1. Identify Richter's command transmissions in real time. 2. Acknowledge them with fake confirmations, suggesting Blue Force was still deceived. 3. Simultaneously broadcast corrected information to Blue Force units on secondary channels. Richter wasn't monitoring. 4. Feed Richter false intelligence about Blue Force positions, making him believe his deception was succeeding when it had actually been neutralized. It was psychological warfare wrapped in technical execution. Richter would think he was winning until Blue Force sprang the trap. Elena coded furiously, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The algorithm had to be perfect. 1 error and Richter would detect the reversal, adapt, and reinforce. She had 1 shot. 4 minutes remaining. She uploaded the framework to the TOC's central communications server, configured automatic deployment triggers, and initiated a system-wide synchronization. Green lights across the board. 2 minutes remaining. Elena grabbed her father's manual and returned to the TOC. The TOC had deteriorated in her absence. More red icons on the display, more frantic voices, more units reporting failures. Hendricks looked like he'd aged 5 years in 30 minutes. Chief Ward, tell me you have something. Yes, sir. But it requires precise execution and trust in the process. Elena approached the main display, pointing to the 3 nodes she'd identified. These are Richter's command positions. He's rotating active frequency between them to avoid detection, but the pattern is predictable. I've uploaded countermeasures to our communication system that will what? Pierce interrupted. Because from where I'm standing, we're on the verge of total exercise failure, and you've spent 30 minutes in a basement with an old Soviet manual. Elena ignored him, speaking directly to Hendricks. Sir, in approximately 90 seconds, our units will begin receiving corrected information on secondary channels. Simultaneously, Richter will receive fake confirmations suggesting his deception is still working. He'll believe he's conducting the orchestra when we've actually changed the sheet music. That's insane, Pierce said. It's exactly what my father proposed 15 years ago, Elena replied coldly. The methodology he tried to implement before someone ensured his equipment failed. The TOC went silent. Hendricks looked between Elena and Pierce, understanding dawning. Captain Pierce, step back. Chief Ward, you have operational control. Show me. Elena moved to a terminal, pulling up the real-time signal monitor. Watch the blue unit icons. When they start coordinating properly, you'll know the system is working. 60 seconds passed. Then, blue force icons began moving with renewed purpose. A Marine recon unit that had been pinned by false GPS data suddenly shifted vectors, their actual position synchronizing with the display. An Army company that had nearly engaged friendly forces received corrected identification and repositioned. A Navy patrol that had been holding position due to contradictory orders pushed forward into an advantageous position. It's working, someone whispered. On the display, red force icons maintained their aggressive posture. Richter still believed blue force was blind and disorganized. He was positioning for a decisive strike that would never land, because his targets weren't where he thought they were. Chief Ward, Hendricks said quietly, guide them in. Elena took a breath. This was the moment defensive action based on her father's theory, executed in real time against one of the world's best electronic warfare specialists. All units, this is TOC actual. You are clear on corrected channels. Red Team Command is compromised. They're fighting ghosts. Execute flanking maneuvers on transmitted coordinates. The next 20 minutes were surgical. Blue Force units, now operating with accurate information, maneuvered around Red Team positions that had been left vulnerable by Richter's overconfidence. One by one, the exercise referees called Red Team units as eliminated or captured. Richter tried to adapt. Elena watched his frequencies shift, his signal patterns evolve, but he was responding to false data she was feeding him. Every adjustment he made drew him deeper into the trap. The final Red Team position, Richter's personal command post, was surrounded by 3 Blue Force elements converging from unexpected vectors. Red Actual is compromised, the exercise controller announced. Oracle Falcon concludes with Blue Force victory. Time, 1400 hours. The TOC erupted in cheers. Elena stood quietly, her father's manual held against her chest, watching the display as the icons turned neutral. She felt no triumph, only a profound exhaustion mixed with grief she'd carried for 15 years. Her father had been right, and he'd died for it. The after-action review began 2 hours later in the main briefing room. Hendricks addressed the assembled officers and senior enlisted personnel. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened today was unprecedented. Oracle Falcon was designed to be challenging. It became a near disaster. The fact that we recovered and secured victory is due to one person's expertise and decisive action under pressure. He gestured to Elena, standing at attention in the front row. Chief Petty Officer Elena Ward identified and countered an adversary using advanced electronic warfare techniques that our current doctrine doesn't address. She did this in 30 minutes with minimal resources, under conditions designed to induce failure. Hendricks paused. Klaus Richter, our Red Team commander, has requested to speak. He's on secure video. A screen activated, showing Richter, a man in his 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Admiral Hendricks, Richter said with a slight German accent, I must congratulate Chief Ward personally. In 40 years of electronic warfare operations, no one has reversed my tactics so completely. May I ask how you identified my methodology? Elena stepped forward. You used Stasi-era tri-layer deception, refined from Soviet doctrine developed in the 1980s. My father, Master Sergeant Daniel Ward, documented those exact tactics before his death in 2009. His research gave me the framework to recognize and counter your approach. Richter's expression shifted surprise, then something darker. Daniel Ward. Yes, I knew that name. There was an incident in Afghanistan involving signals intelligence. I was consulted afterward. Consulted by whom? Elena's voice was level, but everyone in the room could hear the edge beneath. United States military officials. They were concerned about research he'd been conducting into Soviet electronic warfare. They wanted to know if his theories were valid. Richter paused. I told them they were. I also told them that if an adversary understood these techniques, they could compromise NATO communications infrastructure. I recommended his findings be classified and further developed. They weren't, Elena said. They were buried. And my father died 3 days later in an equipment failure that was never properly investigated. Pierce had gone pale. He stood abruptly. "Admiral, this is inappropriate." "Sit down, Captain," Hendricks ordered. "Mr. Richter, continue. I was told the research would be protected. Instead, I heard nothing more. When I was hired as your Red Team commander, I used those same Soviet techniques because I assumed they'd been countered by now. I was testing your defenses." Richter looked directly at Elena through the screen. "Your father was a brilliant analyst. His death was... I'm truly sorry." Elena felt something crack inside her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Captain Pierce opposed my father's research. He filed formal objections, classified his reports, prevented publication. 3 days later, my father was dead." All eyes turned to Pierce. "I followed proper channels," Pierce said, his voice strained. "Ward's theories were based on outdated Soviet material. You didn't think they were valuable," Hendricks finished coldly. "So you buried research that could have prevented today's near disaster. And when Master Sergeant Ward died, you ensured his work stayed buried." He turned to an aide. "Have MPs escort Captain Pierce to confinement pending investigation." 2 military police officers entered. Pierce's face was ashen. "Sir, I was following orders." "Whose orders?" Hendricks demanded. Pierce said nothing as he was led away. Elena stood alone in the TOC 3 hours later. After the debriefs and statements and formal documentation, the space was quiet now. Only a few watchstanders monitoring routine traffic. Hendricks found her there. "Chief Ward, you should be celebrating. With respect, sir, my father is still dead." "Yes. And the investigation into his death is being reopened. Captain Pierce will answer questions under oath. Others who were involved will face scrutiny." Hendricks stood beside her, looking at the now peaceful displays. "It won't bring him back." "No, sir. But his work will be recognized. Properly classified, properly developed, properly credited. The Navy is issuing a posthumous commendation. Your father's theories are now official doctrine, and you'll be leading the team that implements them." Elena turned to look at him. "Sir, there's still the matter of the assault charges. 11 Marines filed complaints about that." Hendricks pulled out his phone, opened a video file, handed it to her. The Iron Lantern security camera wasn't malfunctioning. Tommy Briggs had a backup system. He was waiting to see how things played out before he came forward. Elena watched the video. It showed everything clearly. Mercer grabbing the manual, Elena giving 3 warnings, Mercer's continued aggression, the brief fight that followed, self-defense, clearly documented. "The Marines have withdrawn their complaints," Hendricks said. "In fact, Gunnery Sergeant Mercer has requested a formal meeting with you. He wants to apologize." Elena handed the phone back. "Respectfully, sir, I don't need his apology. I need him to never touch someone else's property without permission. He'll learn that lesson. He and his men are facing non-judicial punishment for filing false reports and creating a hostile environment." Hendricks pocketed his phone. "You could have ended their careers, Chief. The evidence is clear. But you're choosing not to press it. Why?" "Because they were tools, sir. Pierce used them to distract and discredit me, to stop me from continuing my father's work. They're guilty of stupidity and arrogance, not conspiracy." Elena looked back at the displays. "I'd rather they learn from this than be destroyed by it." Hendricks nodded slowly. "Your father would be proud of you, Chief Ward. Not just for today's tactical success, for the person you've become." Elena felt tears threaten for the first time in years, but she controlled them. "Thank you, sir. Take 72 hours liberty. That's an order. When you return, we'll begin developing the Ward protocol for electronic warfare countermeasures." He started to leave, then paused. "And Chief, your SEAL status is secure. No one questions it anymore. You've proven yourself beyond any doubt." Elena's apartment was dark when she returned at 2300. She made tea, sat at her small kitchen table, and opened her father's manual for the last time. She'd read every page, decoded every annotation, understood every theory he'd developed. His work was complete now, validated, recognized, implemented. The mission he'd started 15 years ago was finished. She turned to the inside back cover, where her father had written a final message in small, precise handwriting. "To whoever continues this work, the greatest weapon isn't technology, it's understanding. Understand your enemy's doctrine, their psychology, their rhythm. Then change the music. They'll never see it coming. Stay safe. Do what's right. Make me proud." MSGT Daniel Ward. Elena traced the words with her finger, allowing herself one moment of grief, one moment of connection across the years. Then she closed the manual, placed it carefully in a locking drawer, and secured it. Tomorrow, she would begin training others in her father's methodology. The Ward Protocol would protect American forces from threats most people couldn't imagine. Her father's legacy would save lives. Tonight, she allowed herself to simply be his daughter, the girl who'd lost him too soon, who'd spent 15 years searching for answers, who'd finally brought him home. Mission complete, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. You can rest